masking tape and super glue. Really strong. Up until now, pretty much all the guitars I've built have been one-offs. I enjoy the one-offs. It kind of gives me scope to go a little bit mad. But, as some of you might be aware, my day job is working at UKGB, which is UK Guitar Builders. We build PJD guitars, Cream Tea guitars, we've done some of the team built guitars for Seth Baccus, and we're building for a couple of other brands that are currently unannounced. They might have been announced by the time this video goes live. They might not. We'll see. But obviously doing that, I've learned a lot about production and kind of how to get more guitars out. My personal approach is definitely small numbers. I don't want to churn out loads of guitars because that's where the magic disappears. I enjoy making something different. But I'm aware that some people are interested in making bigger numbers of guitars. So I thought I'd have a go at kind of small batch production. So the past few videos I've done have been various takes on my Phoenix body shape. I've got a friend who built me my CNC and I'm paying him back by building him a guitar, which will probably be a video series at some point because it's quite an interesting one and he wants all kinds of awkward things. Mostly in the electronics, but that's his domain, so I'll probably get him to come and speak to you. But the version he wants is a single cut, so I've modified my Phoenix to make a single cut version, which made me think, if I do small batches, a slight variation in kind of single and double cut isn't that much of a difference. So I can still do something a bit different, but still do a batch. And to make that batch possible, there's going to be a lot of new jigs and templates and things required in this. So this could turn out to be a fairly long video series with a lot of videos detailing jigs and templates of how to make things more repeatable and uniform. Because the key to production is repeatability. Things like my pickup winder is a CNC based pickup winder. I still use the manual functions quite a lot, but it's very nice to have presets that I can just hold the wire and know that it's going to create the same thing as the program that I've saved. So if I make something that I like, I can make that 2, 3, 100 times at the click of a button. The templates are going to be a kind of more manual way of doing that, but they should have a very similar outcome. So in previous videos you've seen me cut out body blanks, thickness body blanks, there's quite a few videos of me now putting together multi-laminate neck blanks. In the future, if I do more batches, I'm going to probably go with more one-piece necks or slightly simpler necks, but because I'm doing this for me and I really like multi-laminate necks with tapered laminates, I've been preparing various parts for this build series, and we've got not 1, not 2, but 3 body blanks ready to go. These have been thickness down to, I believe I took them to 44mm. It was either 44 or 42. I need to check my drawings because they're all down to the same thickness. They're all cut close to the line. They're not routed out to final shape yet. And they're all ready to go. But as well as the bodies, I started making the neck blanks, so I've done all the tapering and the cutting and gluing. So for the mahogany body, which is a single cut, we've got a mahogany and maple neck blank. And for the two swamp ash bodies, we've got Paduke with a Wenge centre stripe. Now this is a stripped back junior version essentially of my Phoenix. So there's no top, it's not chambered, it's not really contoured in any fancy over the top way. I'm going to have an arm bevel and a contour on the back for comfort, and I'll have a cutaway contour for upper fret access. They'll all have 24 frets. I'm still undecided as to whether we're going rosewood or ebony on all of the necks. I might do 2 rosewood, 1 ebony, or 2 ebony, 1 rosewood. I'm just going to see what works best when I get to it. Colour wise, we'll get there. Haven't decided that yet, except that this one I think is going to get kind of vintage burst. These two, currently fair game. I might do 1 black, 1 natural. Pick out the grain possibly. We'll get to that when we get there. But for now, what I want to get started on is roughing everything out and getting it ready for the first stages of kind of working in batches. So working at UKGB, building PJD guitars, we've recently modified the way we work a little bit to improve production numbers without losing any of the kind of standards and quality, which has changed a few of the processes and kind of it's made it a little bit less one-on-one with a guitar. So for instance, we use a CNC to do the majority of the kind of roughing out work, but the necks are finely shaped and sanded and the contours are all hand carved. The bodies come off very blocky. They're to final shape, but they're still rough out of the block. They need any kind of heel contours or roundovers and things all need to be done by hand. We've tried to keep that there because PJD Guitars prides itself on the fact that they are handmade, which is a good thing to be proud of. These are going to be slightly more handmade in that I don't have a CNC big enough to do anything more than inlays and pickup covers, but I quite like that. So I'm going to be making templates for the pickup layout, a standardised neck pocket, templates that make it easy to get things like the arm contours and bevels in the same place every time. And in general, doing jobs that normally would take 10-15 minutes or an hour, 2 hours, if you're doing it for 1 guitar, it takes that length of time. If you're doing it for 2 guitars or 3 guitars, it doesn't take 2 or 3 times as long, because what we've found is when you've set up for a job and you're doing that job, you streamline it to the point where it gets quicker. It's not a very good way of describing it, is it? It's the little things like the it's for instance fretting. If you're fretting 3 necks, you prepare the frets for 3 necks whilst you've got a roll of fret wire out. You've got all the tools there that you need. If you're doing 1 at a time, all that time that's spent setting up, getting the right tools out, checking that you've got enough glue, and maybe running out and having to order another bottle for when you get to the next neck or whatever. If you start knowing that you're doing 3, you've got everything ready for 3, it's a hell of a lot quicker to do it in a batch. It's a hell of a lot more efficient, and to be honest, because you set up for bigger numbers, it's more accurate, more consistent. So the first thing I need to do with these is work on the bodies. And what I will say is this first batch, whilst I'm getting jigs and things set up, will be done in a slightly different order and slightly less efficiently than, say, the next batch of 3 would be. Because I've got to make all the jigs, I've got to do things in a certain order to get to a certain point to be able to make a jig. Say for the neck pocket, I have to have the neck shaped and ready to go so that I know exactly where my fretboard's going to sit in relation to all the contours and the shapes that are in there, which I need to have the headstock angle cut on the first neck to know exactly where the nut's going to be. I have to have the fretboard cut out to know exactly where the join is going to be. Once I've got that on the first one, it's exactly the same across the board, which means that my templates then just transfer. So the next batch after that, I could make 10 bodies completely, all finished, done, ready for necks gluing in, and they wouldn't need anything else doing until the necks were finished. But I don't want to make 10. So for now, I'm going to make a start on these. I'm going to put the necks to one side, and the first thing I'm going to do, I've made the body templates for these, so obviously the 2 single cuts here have got a slightly different body shape, but I've modified it so that the only difference is between this point here and this point here. So everything else is still the Phoenix. All we do is we move this point back and we join it up slightly below the neck join. Which means I can use the same neck pocket template for both shapes. Now to get templates out and start some routing. And there we have 3 cut-out bodies. I have to say, I can't rate the Radian double bearing 2-inch monster cutter highly enough, especially when it comes to cutting out bodies like this. If you've done it before with a router, you'll know, unless you're incredibly lucky, how annoying tear out can be. And remembering when to slow down and where to take very shallow cuts when you're going into the end grain is a bit of a nightmare. I've got a couple of templates that I've used in the past where I've got arrows drawn on top of it. It's basically just because of this router bit. It's fantastic. You can start off with the bearing running on the template on top and cutting just smoothly off, as long as it's cutting the grain away, not digging into the end grain. As soon as you hit the grain or the changing grain direction, stop. And take it round on all of the bits of the body where you're slicing off the grain. And then rather than messing about changing a route a bit or taking the template off and trying to line it all up again, flip the body over, lift the router up so that the bottom bearing is running on it, and just go around all the other bits. And instead of digging into the end grain where it was, it's flipped the end grain the other way, so it's slicing it clean again. Obviously it's wood, you're always going to get a small amount of tear out and things, and I've used that cutter quite a lot now, so it's not as sharp as it once was. But for something like Swamp Ash is notorious for, especially the end grain, tearing everywhere and being a nightmare. That's pretty clean. I'm more than happy with that. Now what I need to do with these before anything else is sand them. So the major part of my day job is getting the bodies kind of close to this stage. They've got the pickup pockets and things routed in, but that's because the CNC can do that in set locations and everything is indexed. Once I've got my jigs and templates set up, I'll be able to do that in here as well. The template that sits on top can route the outline, then I'll route the neck pocket, and then we're done. Not the neck pocket, the pickup pocket. We don't want the neck pocket yet. We definitely don't want that yet. But all I need to do is sand around this, and normally I'd use a combination of spindle sander and an absolutely delightful little Mirka palm sander. But I haven't got one of the Mirka sanders here because my air compressor isn't big enough to run one. I really need a bigger air compressor. And then I can start spraying things. That'd be nice. But for now, I'm going to have to deal with what I've got. So I'll probably be getting out my, I believe it's a Bosch palm sander. It is. It's also on the floor down there. And using the spindle sander and getting these nice and clean. Now the main thing with the hand sanding is you want to get any marks and scratches that the spindle sander puts in out. So the spindle sander is fantastic for smoothing the shape. Obviously if you have an oscillating belt sander, which Triton do, which I don't have, from here to here and here is probably easier to do on that. The issue with the spindle is that because it's a tighter radius, it wants to put little divots in the big flat sides every now and then. So if you can run it over a flatter surface, it'll make it smoother quicker. But again, hand sand it, get the scratches out. If you don't get the scratches out early, when you start doing things like binding, bevels, roundovers, you've then got to reshape everything that you've done after you've sanded the scratches out. All sanding is replacing deep scratches with slightly less deep scratches until you reach a grit where the scratches are so shallow and small that you can't actually see them. So on these I'll start at 120 grit and I'll get it nice and smooth.